Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am Ryan Tackeray, the Digital Services Librarian for the Genesee District Library, and I'm here with several of our branch librarians to talk about books that they have been reading recently and what they recommend, what they've liked, and what they don't like, whatever their thoughts are and what they've been reading. We'll talk really quick about some of our programs. I won't name any specifically, but if you go to any of our 19 branches, you can get a copy of our program guide right here. It's also available on our website at thegdl.org. And you can go to the gdl.org/events and see all of our programs for this summer. There's a lot. We're doing in-person programs again for the first time in a while, and more virtual programs like this. So if you enjoy this, check out what's on there and come and see us in person at one of our in-person programs as well. If you are watching this, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube or on our website, please feel free to leave a comment and leave us a message and let us know what you're reading or what your thoughts on the books we're talking about are. Or just let us know any questions that you might have so we can respond to them here live. One last thing I'll mention too is if you are reading any good books or know anybody who is, maybe you should tell them about our summer reading challenge, which is now live. And you can, I'll leave this running for a little bit at the bottom. You can join at the gdl.beanstack.org and sign up and win a lot of cool prizes. It's a lot of fun, so check it out. We just started about a little over a week ago, so we're just at the very beginning. Still lots of time to track your reading and complete challenges and do all kinds of cool stuff and win some neat prizes. We'll go in the order here that we have on the left, starting with Chris. And Chris, do you want to introduce our theme for the month?
Oh, sure. So June is Pride Month, and we decided as a group that we would each highlight a book that met that subject. And so I selected Hola Papi, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot and Other Life Lessons by John Paul Brammer. I think that's how you say it. After I finished reading the book, I had to go onto Instagram and follow him because I just really enjoyed this book. He kind of fell into his job as an LGBTQ advice columnist, and which has led to the publication of this book. So he's pretty excited to be a published author now. The book is based on his experience as a gay man writing advice columns. So each chapter is kind of opens up as a question that's been presented to him from his advice column, and then he answers it. So some parts of it are kind of chatty and breezy, yet other parts are truthful and heartbreaking. I found it kind of easy to read because it's like listening or like reading an advice column. So they're not super long entries. They're also not super short either. So each chapter, though, I would say was probably a little challenging for him because he was, he answers based on his own personal experience for the most part. And he answers with what I considered like heartfelt honesty. He didn't shy away from the difficult subjects. And he also, was open about how things played out for him as he became a student, as he was a young, middle school student, trying to figure out, am I gay? Am I not gay? What the heck am I? Then as a high school student where he got bullied a little bit, not a little bit, he'd probably say he got bullied a lot. And then as he went into college and, started dating for the first time, it was a really, really great book. I enjoyed it. I think people, readers of all ages, like high school and up, would enjoy reading it.
Where did you first come across this book? How did you hear about it?
I kind of remember seeing it somewhere, but then shortly after we decided on this topic, I was talking to some of the LAs who work with me, and one of them recommended, hey, you should try this one. So I got a huge stack and kind of went through them, browsed them, thought, what's realistic for me to get read in a month with my other book club books. And I selected this one. So And I love the cover.
It's very colorful. Do you like that kind of style? Or do you read other books like that are kind of like this sort of, you said like it's like a device column, right? Like this nonfiction sort of breeze. I feel like I could really understand how you're describing it. It seemed pretty clear to me. Like I could kind of picture, what his writing is like. Have you read other books like that?
I would say no. That was probably
No.
my very kind of first one that was really like that. And I liked the fact that I could kind of just tackle it one chapter at a time. Or if it was, if I had the time, I could keep moving through it. So
Sure. Cool. All right. Thank you, Chris. And let's move to Nancy. What do you want to talk about first? Oops. Let's see. I think you're muted, Nancy. Try say something now.
Okay.
Perfect.
All good. Okay. I read a book called Blaine for the Win by Robbie Couch. And Robbie Couch grew up in Clio, Michigan. And his first book was Sky Blues. And the library has that one as well. And one of our pages here went to Clio with him. She knows him. They worked on the yearbook together. And she said he told her one of these books, she wasn't sure which one, got picked up for a Netflix series. So I was excited to read this book and promote it. I thought by the cover, it's going to be chick lit. But actually, it covered some really nice topics. Blaine is an artist. His boyfriend is planning to become president in the far off future. And he breaks up with Blaine because he needs a boyfriend who's more serious. So because of that, Blaine decides to run to be class president. And it's funny, it's serious. He decides to run on the platform of mental health for kids in school. And the author really brings up some good points about mental well-being for high schoolers. So I really enjoyed it. It was a really quick read, and it was a pre-pub. It came out in April, and I got the pre-pub from GDL, from the library. And so it's out now. I ordered a copy for our branch, and it was a really cute story, really good.
Since the author is from this area, did you notice anything? Does it take place in Michigan, or is it set
No,
somewhere
it doesn't. No, and he's relocated, I think, to LA now, somewhere in California. So no, it's more like that environment.
That's really neat. Something else
Yeah.
here, maybe no one will care about this, but I was trying to figure out while you were talking which book is what it is that's being adapted to Netflix. And so I did a search of the author's name in Netflix. I didn't come up, but the first thing that did come up is a tweet that he tweeted out and someone's reply. And the reply is from Joey Sasso from The Circle, who is someone who I think is really funny if anybody watches The Circle. So that's just weird that
Funny.
that's the first thing that popped up.
Yeah, he's a celebrity. Yeah, I thought it was really cool.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Sherry, what do you want to talk about first?
My first one is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Wong. It's not one I would have normally picked up, but a friend recommended it. She said it was the most beautiful book she'd ever read. She wasn't lying. It's raw, it's shattering, it's haunting. So it's written as a letter. I think it's semi-autobiographical. It's fiction, but I think it's based on his life. It's written as a letter from the main character, who throughout the book, they just call him Little Dog, to his Vietnamese illiterate mother. His relationship to her is pretty complicated, which is alluded to in the book. At times she can be abusive, both physically and emotionally. The language in it is just haunting, and it's beautiful. It reads like a poem, which makes sense since the author is a poet. He touches on so many topics in this book, like really deep topics. He talks about poverty, abuse, racism, his family's history in Vietnam, masculinity and people's definitions of masculinity, and his sexuality. Like I said, it was just haunting, beautiful. It was disturbing, yet it was also hopeful. And this one stayed with me for quite a while. It's heavy, but it's definitely worth the read. He does delve a lot into telling his mother, who he doesn't think would have approved, about the fact that he's a gay man. But he knows she'll never read the letter because she's illiterate, but he just feels like he needs to get all of this off of his chest. And it's a beautiful book. If you get the chance to pick it up, you definitely should.
You described it as a beautiful book. Is there a certain part that stands out to you or really is stuck in your mind in that way?
I think, when he talks about his mother the most, his relationship with her and how he's looking for her approval, even though he knows he probably won't ever get it completely. And her history coming from Vietnam to here, and how tough her life is, and how he tries to make it easier for her, but he really can't.
All right. Thank you, Sherry. All right, Kristen, what are you going to talk about first?
Okay, so my Pride book this month is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. And this is a memoir that came out, I think it's like 2019, 2020, around that time. And this is a book of personal essays and from George Johnson, who really talks about his life growing up Black and queer in I think it's like New Jersey, sorry. And it kind of explores his childhood, his adolescence, and kind of some of his college years, but mostly like his childhood. And from the beginning of his, pretty much from the beginning, he knew that he was different from his cousins and his brother. But interestingly enough, he was always accepted by his parents and his grandmother, who was very loving to him. And so a lot of his story revolves around his family life and his, in particular, his grandmother. And it just kind of talks about how he faced a lot of difficulty growing up with knowing that he was different and in going through school. One of his memories is when he was in kindergarten. He got his teeth kicked out by bullies. And then other memories are much better, which are going on trips to California with his grandmother and his cousins. And it's just a really excellent memoir that I think everybody should read, starting from teens to adult. I really loved it, enjoyed it. I kind of read it really slowly because I just kind of wanted to really take it in and just really let it sink in. And it was just a beautiful book, kind of like how Sherry said of her book that she read. I just absolutely, I don't know, I'm kind of wondering what took me so long to read this, because it's been on my list for a while. But I will say, it is also one of the books recently and in the past couple of years that has been being removed by school libraries. And so it does have some topics that are controversial, but I think they're important to talk about. And I think that censorship and removing books from libraries is not okay. And that this book should not, or any books really should not be removed from libraries. And that especially, LGBTQ books, they are so important to so many people and so many kids. And I think this book especially is really important for everybody to read, because it talks about things like gender identity and toxic masculinity, and also brotherhood and family and marginalization and consent, and also just him being a Black boy and experiencing such joy, but also like hardships as well. And I think to remove such an important book is really detrimental to that library and really like so read this book. And just it's a beautiful, really beautiful book. Sorry, I went on a tangent there, but yeah. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. What about other works by this author? Have you read anything else, or is this the first thing you've read?
This is the first that I've read. I know that there's another book by him, but I haven't read it yet. I don't know if he has a lot of books out. I know he is a journalist, so I'm not sure. I know he has articles on like BuzzFeed, but I'm not familiar with any of those other work, but I'm definitely going to seek it out because I think he's a really good writer. So.
All right, cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yep.
And we'll go back to the top here with Chris. What do you want to talk about next? What else have you read this month?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. You're muted now. There we go.
Okay. All right. I'm going to touch on George M. Johnson real quick. I believe he's also the keynote speaker for ALA summer conference this summer. So that's cool that he is speaking, and we featured him in our little talk here. So anyway, my second book is Gregor the Overlander by Suzanne Collins. I selected this book to be featured for my revival of the Brown Bag Book Club for kids that I brought back this summer. We actually had it yesterday, and I had 2 kids come and talk about this book with me while we had lunch and ate some cookies. And little girl was 11, little boy was 9, and one of the moms joined us, and we had a great discussion on this book. It was fun. They were super excited about it. The little boy's actually getting ready to start book 3. It's part of a 5-book series, and the little girl had checked out the second book because she just had to find out more about Gregor's adventures. So it's junior fiction. And Suzanne Collins is the author of Hunger Games, but Gregor the Overlander actually came out in 2003, so before Hunger Games. It's been on my shelf at home for many, many years because it was my 19-year-old son's favorite book when he was in the 4th grade. So I was happy to give myself a little kick in the butt to give it a try, and I'm really glad that I did. So it's book 1 in the 5-book series of the Underland Chronicles. It's set in a world underground beneath New York City. Gregor and his sister Boots fall through a grate in their apartment building in the laundry room, and they fall into this Underland world, and thus disappearing from life as we know it, just like their dad did a few years before. So Gregor discovers that they start meeting people in the Underland, and he discovers that he is the chosen one, and that's why he fell through the grate, I guess it was, and that it was no accident that he fell through this grate, because he is a major part of a prophecy to save the Underland. So it's full of interesting characters, like talking rats and cockroaches, which the 2 kids absolutely loved the rats, even though in general the rats are the bad guys in the book. It's full of adventure and action, and at the end of it totally leaves you wanting more. So I really loved this book. I'd like to read the rest of them, but we'll see if time gives me the opportunity to get to them.
That sounds like so much fun. What are you reading for the next book club?
It is How to Train Your Dad by Gary Paulsen. I'm hoping that one's, so the 2 kids who came aren't too excited about How to Train Your Dad. It's more contemporary, and I'm hoping funny.
Well, maybe the 2 of them, if it's just the 2 of them next time, then they need to talk about the Gregor sequel.
Yeah, right.
That sounds like, that sounds like so fun, book club with younger people. Maybe we should get a review from them for a future episode of this if they want to be involved. You have to give us an update on how they like the next one.
Yeah, I will.
All right, cool. Thanks, Chris. Nancy, what do you want to talk about next?
Considered a Pride book. It was written by T.J. Klune. It's Under the Whispering Door. That's his most recent book. The first one was The House in the Cerulean Sea, and he writes about fantasy. His protagonists are, so far, have been gay, but it's just a small part of the story, I think. The one review called it A Man Called Uwe Meets the Good Place. A delightfully queer love story. This is about a crotchety old lawyer who's almost heartless in the way he runs his life and his business. And almost in the very first page, he dies. So he has to deal with realizing he's dead. And someone comes to collect him and take him to another place. So he has a whole journey after he's dead, and it almost teaches him the meaning of life. And I just hang on every word in these stories by T.J. Klune. They're so good. They're so odd. You can see this little house on the cover. This is a tea shop, and it's a way station for the dead before they, they meet the ferryman here before they go on to the other place. And it's delightful. It's just a really good story. For anyone, it kind of reads like junior or teen fiction. It's just fantasy for adults, and I just really enjoyed it. It was really good.
Sherry, I know you talked about House of the Cerulean Sea here before. Have you read this far into the series?
I have not read this one. It's on my list.
It's on your list? I didn't think you will. I think you seem to really enjoy the House of the Cerulean Sea.
It was so good.
Yeah, that's one that sticks on my mind. Like the cover, I feel like is so vivid. Like I can't. As soon as I saw this one, like, oh yeah, this is the same author. It's the same kind of style.
The only thing I minded was I listened to the audiobook, and the author uses the word cerulean to describe blue. I think I counted 5 times. I think that's too many.
All right. Sherry, what are you talking about next?
The next one I'm talking about is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. It's kind of contemporary fantasy, sort of. It was an odd book. I enjoyed it, but it was a little odd. So Annie is the main character, and she moves to upstate New York after a tough breakup with a boyfriend. Her ex-boyfriend Sam had been in her life since she was a teenager, and she wasn't expecting it to end, much less with her having to leave New York City because she can't afford to live without them sharing the rent. She's extremely depressed, and she'd do anything to get Sam back. So at times she can be a little whiny and annoying because of that. But there's something a little strange about her new house. There seem to be an awful lot of spiders in her apartment. And the townspeople seem to be afraid of Annie's new friend, Sophie. Sophie gets things for free. People seem to want to bend over backwards to make her happy. And Annie can't figure out why, because Sophie seems like the perfect friend. But then she goes to Sophie's house, and it's a huge mansion in the woods. It's haunted. There's ghosts. The people are afraid of her. And she also talks about some strange things like people trying to drown her or losing friends hundreds of years ago. And Annie just kind of brushes it off as, okay, Sophie's just a little different. So Annie's not sure what's going on, but after a creepy exchange, I should mention Annie's a teacher, with a strange exchange with a student, which is gross, by the way. The teenager vomits up spiders. So if you're afraid of spiders, this is probably not the book for you. And then she has a blind date that goes really wrong. So she starts to suspect that maybe Sophie is a witch. So she has to figure out if she really wants to still be friends with someone that everyone else is afraid of and that creepy things seem to happen around. The book's dark, it's strange, it's disturbing, but I like the ending of the book. It was the getting there that was just a little kind of slow and at times gross. Annie's annoying for the first part of the story. You feel bad for her a little, but she really does like drive you crazy. And again, if you have a spider phobia, this is definitely not the book for you.
No one can see it but me, but when you mentioned the spiders the first time, I think Kristen had like a physical reaction.
So this isn't the book for you, Kristen.
Would you say, is it more scary or more just kind of like gross in the horror?
It's more disturbing, I think.
Yeah.
It's not really scary, it's just disturbing.
All right.
And you read a lot of witch books.
I do. That was disturbing.
All
right. Thanks, Sherry. Kristen, what do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, that I'm definitely out with that book. So I'm going to talk about Nomadland by Jessica Bruder. We read this for the Flushing Book Club in May, and it was a really interesting read. It is the inspiration for the Oscar-winning 2020 film that starred Frances McDormand. If anybody's seen that, this is the book. And I really enjoyed this book. It is very frustrating though, so I will tell you about it. This is a book about the people who have been affected or impacted by the 2008 financial crisis, the collapse of the housing market. And they are people who are living in their vehicles, trailers, vans. Even one man was living in a Prius. He had ducked it out enough to live in a Prius, which was very interesting. They are living in campgrounds or other places where they can stay in their vehicles or their trailers, motorhomes, etc. They have discovered different jobs that they can work. So like some of them are working on campgrounds as like to take care of the grounds and like check people in. Other people are working for Amazon, and Amazon has called this the Camper Force program. Some of these warehouses are in Texas. Others are in other places in like the Midwest, and they make up largely of these transient older adults. And as you read or even watch the film, I haven't seen the film yet, but you will see how difficult it is for these people to work for Amazon. As I'm sure a lot of people have heard, the working in the warehouse is not an easy job. So a lot of these, there's like tens of thousands of people that have, are living in these RVs and vans, and they're kind of growing a community within themselves. And so this book kind of tells the tale of the, I guess you could say like the dark underbelly of the American economy, but it also kind of celebrates like the resilience and creativity of all these people too, right? So they're not giving up, they're still surviving. And so this book is frustrating, but also super interesting. And it kind of focuses on one person for most of the book, but also you get these other snippets of these other people that come into and what they've gone through, and how they're dealing with their own issues, I guess, with as far as like they can't afford their traditional housing anymore, so they're now living in these different, modified vans and everything. And the author even, she does the same thing. So she buys a van and she modifies it so that she can live with them. And she works for Amazon for a while, and she works for a factory for a while, just so she can kind of become part of the community for a minute. And it's such a good book. I really do recommend it. If you like nonfiction, it's a great like narrative nonfiction, because it's like telling you a story, and like that's my favorite kind of nonfiction, because I love reading a story, and it's just, I don't know. I really liked this book. But like I said, it can be like, so like in our book club, it was kind of controversial because there was like some differences of opinion on how some of these people got here and what they did to get here. And so I think that was like our first book club that kind of, we were kind of on some of us were on different sides of, in our opinion. So I will say that, but overall the opinion of everybody was it's a good book, but it can be depressing because of the situation. But yes, I do recommend it.
I feel like a bad librarian because when this movie came out in theaters, I was really trying to see it. It was hard to see it anywhere because it wasn't showing. It was 2020. But I never knew it was even based on a book until just now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you plan to watch the movie?
I do. I want to. I know it's on Hulu, so I know I can access it like whenever I want to. I just haven't. I don't know. I haven't been watching a lot of TV shows lately. So I guess I'm just gonna have to like sit down and watch it. But like I don't know because it was so hard to read in some places, so I don't know if I want to watch it. Like,
right. It seems like
yeah. But yeah. It's good. You should read the book when you get a chance.
All right. That's Kristen. All right, Chris, what is your last book for today?
So my last book for today is actually my fiction book club selection for July. So if you think it sounds interesting, I will encourage you to check it out, read it, and join us. It's the second Wednesday at 10 a.m. in Fenton. So it's As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner. It's historical fiction about the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. I selected it because, we all recently or are still living in a pandemic. This particular book was written in 2018 before the COVID-19 pandemic. So it made for a very interesting read. It's set in Philadelphia. The Bright family has moved there to live with their uncle, who is an undertaker. And the father is going to kind of, learn the business and eventually take over for the uncle. Soon the Spanish flu arrives and claims more than 12,000 victims. And the family has to adapt to these new living conditions, as well as be privy to the kind of the behind the scenes of what happens to all these victims as they have died, and what do undertakers do with all these bodies. This is fiction. So they take in a baby orphan whose mother has died from the flu. And this baby kind of represents hope for the future. And they don't really spend any time finding out if there's any living relatives for this baby. So when the second half of the book is presented, it's deals with the time after the flu pandemic. And we learn a little bit more about this baby and what the daughters have grown up to do with their time since the flu. If you like historical fiction, I recommend reading it. I really liked it. A lot of it kind of came home because of COVID-19. And, it was interesting to see she wrote this in 2018 before we all actually lived in a pandemic. And so some of her observations about the 1919 flu pandemic were really spot on for what we lived in. So
that's what I was going to ask. That's so interesting. What an interesting time to write such a novel, right before COVID. Do you think if this book were to be written after, perhaps, would have changed any, do you think? Or do you think that would have, or do you think, what would that have been like? To have that, go ahead, Jay, go ahead.
I kind of wonder if people would have said, oh, she's just basing what happened in 1919 on what happened in 2020. But because she didn't,
Right.
That she based it all on her research and everything. So yeah, it's pretty neat to read the similarities anyway.
Right. All right. Thank you. Nancy, what do you want to read or talk about next for your final book?
I read a teen fiction book. It came out in January of this year, so you can get it at the library. And the title is Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves. It's a sci-fi adventure on an icy planet. And Senna is a girl. She has two moms, and they both died in this sled race. You're either on this world of tundra, you're either a scaver or a corpo. The corpos are trying to get this precious mineral, and they all participate in this sled race every year to have rights to this precious mineral. It's how everyone has money. They call their money chits, and it's how you earn chits to live on this world. And the scavers have rejected that lifestyle, and they live in caves and off the land, and they don't depend on this mineral, and they don't participate in the race. In fact, they try to ruin the race if they can and attack the racers. So Senna flees. They want her to race. The mob boss wants her to race, and he captures her and tries to force her to race. And she breaks free, and she comes in contact with one of his fighting wolves, who this is basically a feral wolf. It's not like a sled dog. And she befriends this wolf, and the majority of the story is about their relationship and how they get out of the situation that they're in. And actually, she ends up participating in the sled race with her feral wolf. I love dogs. I have dogs that sled race. They don't race, they just pull my sled for fun. But so I for sure was going to read this book. But it's really good. It's fast-paced. It's sci-fi in a futuristic world. It has a good life lesson to it. And the protagonist is very interesting. And it's a pretty fast read. It's teen fiction. So I just really enjoyed it a lot. And it sounds like there'll be more books with this character. They set it up that way.
That sounds really interesting, Nancy. Do you read a lot of sci-fi books? I feel like you don't talk a lot about a lot of sci-fi.
No, I like the supernatural. I read a lot of books based in the supernatural, but sci-fi, no. I just came across this one because of the wolves, basically.
The dogs that drew you in.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. And Sherry, what is your last book today?
My last book is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. I was waiting for this book to come out. As soon as I read a description of it, I emailed the publisher and was like, are there any advanced review copies? I need to read this book. And it took a while to get one, but I finally got my hands on one. It is out now. And I think this one might be my favorite book of the year so far. It's described as Discovery of Witches, which is one of my favorite series, meets The Craft. It's fairly accurate. I definitely think anyone who liked Discovery of Witches will like this one. So as teenagers, Helena, Leonie, Sierra, Neve, and Elle took an oath to Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which was established by Queen Elizabeth I as a covert government department. So now the girls are grown up, and while they're still pretty close, they've gone their separate ways. Helena is the high priestess of Her Majesty's Royal Coven. Leonie has started her own coven in London that features people of color. Sierra is in a coma because she tried to betray the coven. Neve is a vet who uses her powers to speak to the animals. And Elle is busy trying to pretend that she is not a witch. She doesn't want her husband to know anything about her powers or anything. So she's pretty much just a housewife trying to avoid her powers until she realizes that her daughter has powers and is coming into them, and she'll need to tell at least her daughter. So they're brought back together after a young warlock's been captured by authorities, and Her Majesty's Royal Coven believes he could be the end of the world as they know it. They're calling him the Sullied Child. They have oracles who work for Her Majesty's Royal Coven who believe that this could be the end of the world as they know it. It turns out that the Sullied Child is a transgender child, teenager. And the author is transgender. So this reads like completely true to transgender experiences. It's a perfect book for Pride Month. The characters are amazing. There's a lot of social issues portrayed in them, but without being preachy. It's not preachy at all. It just kind of is just entwined into the story. And there's also a lot about how organizations exclude women, people of color, and LGBTQ individuals. And as I mentioned, it's not preachy. It's just kind of entwined in the story. There's history woven in as well. Elle is a descendant of Demdike, who happened to be one of the women who was accused of witchcraft in the Pendle trials in England, which is where the story takes place, is in England. There's several twists. I will warn you, there's a cliffhanger at the end, since this is slated to be a trilogy. I didn't realize that when I read it. As I got close to the end, I was like, oh, I don't think this is going to wrap up very smoothly, and then realized it's a trilogy. But so good. If you like supernatural type books, if you want to read something by a transgender author, pick this one up. It's so good.
Are there any books you would compare it to that you read?
It definitely ties in with like Discovery of Witches, and I would also say The Familiars by Stacey Halls, I think is her last name. That one's historical fiction that takes place during the Pendle witch trial, so it would be fairly similar.
All right. Thank you. I always get that feeling too when you're getting to the end and you're like, wait a second, this can't quite end. Yeah, doesn't really add up. All right, thanks, Sherry. And Kristen, you get to close it out for us. What is the last book we'll talk about today?
Okay, so my last book is Meisner.
Hold on, you cut out for a second.
I'm sorry. Okay, so it's You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akweke Emeze. This is, so I don't read a lot of romance, but this is a romance book, a romance novel. And I actually picked this up because I'm a huge fan of the author. They are a gender, and they have written some really good YA novels and some good adult novels. And I was really excited for this book also because the title is part of a Florence and the Machine song. So I was like, this book is made for me. I have to read it. So this book is about Faye. She is grieving because it's been 5 years since the accident that killed the love of her life, her husband. And she's thinking about starting to date again. And her best friend Joy is insisting it's time for her to kind of ease back into the dating scene, but Faye's not really ready for anything serious, but she has a steamy encounter at a party, and it kind of cascades into this whirlwind summer, and she couldn't have ever imagined. She takes this trip to a tropical island, and then she gets these decadent meals in this house of a celebrity chef. And then there's Faye's an artist, and there's a major curator who wants to kind of launch her art career. So she's just having like the best summer. She started dating this perfect guy, but she's not really sure yet because she's still kind of in her grief. So she, while she's kind of dating this guy, she meets another guy. So while she's dating this perfect guy, this new relationship is probably going to be sabotaged before it even gets a chance because of this one guy who's pretty much off limits. And there's a reason why, but I'm not going to say it because it'll spoil it. So now her life is more complicated. And so now she's kind of like is she ready to really like let herself, you know, let the grief go and fall in love, or is she like, can she kind of release that past on her grief and kind of, you know, embrace the future? And then like, how far is she kind of willing to go, like for this other guy to kind of get that second chance at love? So I loved this book. And like I said, I'm not a huge romance reader, but it was so good. It like, I love Akwaeke Emeze's writing. And so it was just really nice. This is kind of their first big release. Like they've had New York Times best-selling books before, and they've won they've been a finalist for the National Book Award, but this is like their big release that's been like all over the place. Like it was on Book Page and it's on Book Talk. And so I'm so happy for them to get like this, you know, major debut. And yeah, it's great. Like if you like romance, definitely read this book because it's really beautiful. And I mean, look at the cover. It's beautiful. You're muted.
Can you give us one other book by them that you like?
Yes. So there is it's called Pet. It's a YA novel. And there's a sequel that I haven't read yet. It's called Bitter. But yes. And then there's they have a couple of other novels too, adult. And then they also have a memoir as well. But I haven't read the memoir yet. But yes, they just beautiful writing. So yeah.
All right. Thank you. So that should wrap it up today. Does anybody have any comments before we want to head out? We had a message somebody left. Rose said that their niece has this book in her summer reading list. That was a while ago. I don't know which book that was. So let us know, Rose. And
I think it was. I'm sorry. I think it was the one that Nancy read, the T.J. Klune book.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, all right. Anybody wants to say before we go?
Should we tell them our theme for next month, maybe, in case anybody wants to join in?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, okay. So because July has a lot of national food themed days, we thought it would be fun to read a book about food or related to food. So if anybody else wants to join in, that would be kind of fun. And let us know what you read.
That sounds good. So that'll be our theme for July. It feels weird. It feels like July isn't like right around the corner, but it is.
Yeah,
but it is.
So that'll be next month. We'll be back here, and we hope you tune in and watch then as well. And thanks for watching today. And I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday. Take care.
Bye.